Tavshin Chav Vav Chai Elul Parshas Kisavoy. Let's make sure it goes on the recording properly. Forget to bring up the text. Okay, like I said, so this is a talk from the Rebbe from the year 1966. Tavshin Chav Vav. Oidis Chai Elul, regard to Chai Elul. Hold on, just get everyone in. Oidis Chai Elul, with regard to Chai Elul, the 18th of Elul. Hey Sharna, Yeshna Harba Sicha Shel Rabbeinu Nisienu. There are many talks from our Rebbes, the Nesiim, the princes of Chabad. Again, Chai El is the birthdays of both the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, the 18th of El. There are many talks that have been printed. So the Rebbe says, I'm not going to say over exactly, but we'll give over an idea from one of the talks of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe about Chai El. I'm only going to mention the parts that that he feels that are important to us at this point right now. For the other details, and to get the exact wording, everyone should look on their own when they have time in the direct talks of the previous Rebbe with regard to the 18th of El.
I don't see your cursor on this page that you're on. You're on Aleph?
Yes, we're on Aleph, page 306 on the top right-hand corner.
I'm on there, but I don't see your cursor where you're at, where you're reading.
I'm starting from the second paragraph. Besichas Chai El, Tavshin Gimel. Okay, from the talk of Chai El, the 18th of El, Tavshin Gimel, 1943. So the previous Rebbe is already in the United States. Sipur Kvekdish Marachami Admer, my father-in-law, is told, Masha Amr Lei Aviv, what he heard from his father. Kvekdish is Admer Marashab, the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Rebbe Chabad, Nishmas Yedin. After they took a walk, atil is like a stroll. It's a known thing. The Friedrich Rebbe and his father would take a stroll. One of the reasons, at least outwardly, was because of for health reasons he was required. Chai Elul Tav Reish Nun Ches on the 18th of Elul, Tav Reish Nun Ches would be 1898. Make sense? No, maybe 1898. Yeah. B'mlois shtei meya shana l'leidis Baal Shem Tov, 200 years. So the Baal Shem Tov was born Nachas, Tov Nun Ches. So this is Tov Reish Nun Ches, 200 years from the birth of the Baal Shem Tov. Koidim Tfilas Arvis, that he heard from his father before Ma'ariv. So the Friedrich Rebbe says what his father told him. Bara Davar, one thing is clear. Asher Ke'eis, now, Shemiskarv's man Tfilas Arvis, that we're getting close to Ma'ariv. Machrizim Birakia, they're ready, calling out in heaven. Oidais Chagigas Yom Eiledis Me'rein Baal Shem Tov. So the Rebbe Shab tells his father, his son, the previous Rebbe, that now that it's 200 years and the birthday of the Baal Shem Tov, obviously after his passing, he passed away many years before. But in heaven, they're already making a big announcement, getting ready to celebrate the birthday of the Baal Shem Tov. Now, we've heard other talks that we've learned in the years before from the Rebbe, from the Rebbe telling all the stories of the Rebbe Shab about Chai El, one of them being the Rebbe Shab's being himself taken up from his father to the heavenly courts and the Chai El, and witnessing over Shabbos Parshas Kisavoy, the 7 Torahs of the Baal Shem Tov. And these are Torahs that were said in heaven. So here the Rebbe Shab says, surely they're already making a big announcement about the Baal Shem Tov's birthday. So he says, Bara Dav, it's clear, Ke'esh, Miskar's man Tfilosafis, Machrizim, Rikia, Aledis, Chagigas Yom Eiledis, Merein Baal Shem Tov. Now that's getting close to Ma'ariv, they're already announcing that it's coming the birthday of the Baal Shem Tov. Bachrazis is Oiru Tzadikim, and in these announcements, what does it mean an announcement in heaven? Is his Oiru Tzadikim, that the righteous get awakened, or get aroused, so to say, elevated. V'heichinu atzmechem, and they prepare themselves. Likras HaChagig HaKadosh, for the great holy celebration of the birthday of Baal Shem Tov. Imagine this. So in heaven, the souls, right? And different people, souls from belonging to different people. So in heaven, there's also times and schedules and birthdays, and they're telling the souls to get ready for the holy day of the birthday of the holy Baal Shem Tov. And the Rebbe Shab quoted the Zohar. Bepalgus Laila Kuchabricho Osai Lishtashaya Tzadikayo begins the Eden. That by midnight, or Chatzot Palgus Laila means half the night. So Chatzos, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Lord comes to kind of take joy with the tzaddikim, with the righteous in the Garden of Eden. And he explains, Shemayos Techaya Neshamas Began Eden. So one would wonder how are there changes in heaven. So the Rebbe Rashab explains that although, again, the Rebbe Rashab is telling this to the Frierdiker Rebbe said this over in a talk in 1943, and the Rebbe is repeating it in 1966. So the Rebbe says that even though that the life of a soul in the Garden of Eden, it's a world that's everything is good. There's no bad in the Garden of Eden. Everything is holy. There's no weekday or mundane. Even though there's stages and worlds of the Gan Eden, but the Gan Eden is the world of Atzilus, of that space. And we know the world of Atzilus is all good. Nevertheless, there's different days. There's Shabbos in heaven, there's a weekday in heaven, there's holidays in heaven, there's a birthday of the Baal Shem Tov in heaven. Because the Frierdiker Rebbe is saying basically, the Rebbe Shabbos is telling him, his father is telling him, that why, if in heaven everything is good, what's the difference between the birthday of the Baal Shem Tov and not? What you do, the Rebbe says, it's known, so the question again is, the higher worlds are beyond time. It's not, they don't run on 24 hours, 60 minutes, 60 seconds, 365 days a year. So how does it work with times? Our world affects change in the higher worlds. So our world runs on our specific time. In the higher worlds, it's above time. But the changes that are happening in our world, because this is the kavanah, this is where the attention is the creation of this world, it has effects, even though they're not restricted to the time limits, to the worlds above. And the Frierdiker Rebbe concludes, so if the Kadosh Baruch Hu goes down every half of the night, Chatzos, to be with the souls in the Garden of Eden, and he takes pleasure and takes joy, surely a night like tonight, the birthday of the Baal Shem Tov, is going to be like any other holiday. So basically, the Frierdiker Rebbe is describing what he heard from his father, and his father is describing to him what Chai Elul is. And this is not the first time. We had many talks from the Frierdiker Rebbe where the Frierdiker Rebbe revealed the conversations he had with his father, the Holy Rebbe Rashab, about experiences of Chai Elul in heaven, especially the Shabbos of the birthday of Baal Shem Tov, when the Baal Shem Tov said the 7 teachings. And the Rebbe is repeating that the Frierdiker Rebbe continued to tell what he heard from his father. When I apply my heart and my mind, when I think about the holy life of the Baal Shem Tov, and I think about the life and the birth of the Alter Rebbe, and their life, which was entailed very difficult work. Baal Shem Tov's work was extremely difficult, right? He started a new way of teaching, a whole new movement that, of course, we all know of, all the hisnagdus, all the pushback, tremendous pushback. He and his Chassidim had, and so too the Alter Rebbe had tremendous pushback, tremendous hisnagdus, not just from the non-Chassidim, but even from the Chassidic circles. And they needed Mesiras Nefesh, a Kedusha Shema Yisbarach, for God's holy name. Within their battles, al Baldover Lamaila, with the Baldover usually is a reference to the voices of the Satan that was against the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. and the teachings of the Alter Rebbe. V'minagdei shitasam, and also against those who were against the philosophy. V'tayrasim lamata, down in this world. So there was both the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe were struggling with higher forces that were trying to stop the progress of Chassidus and the teachings of Chassidus, and the Menagdim, those who are against in this world. And the Rebbe Rashab says, in God's good kindness, El Nitzcham, they were able to be victorious. So now they think about their life and the difficulty of their life and what they had to go through, self-sacrifice. So surely the birthdays and the celebration of the birthdays, Srichim Lichoig Birakia Kechagigas Sari Tzevois Achoizim Arachas Amachama. So surely in heaven they have to be celebrating the birthdays of the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe like when ministers come back from a great war. With all their spoils that they took from the battle, right? Everyone knows whenever there's Rome, they came back and Havdalah of those. The march of a victory, right? The victory march. So imagine in heaven the victory march for the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe. When the Rebbe Rashab finishes, it's almost impossible to figure the depth and the wondrous joy, v'hoid v'hoder, and beauty, haziv, from the shine, hazor, that shines in the heichel, in the chamber of the holy Baal Shem Tov. The Rebbe Rashab says you can't even imagine the shine and holiness that's in the chamber of the holy Baal Shem Tov. The Rebbe explains, the philosophy and the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, shegam yom heladase b'Chai Elul, he shitas v'taris hachasidus, that their birthdays that happened on that what is the Alter Rebbe's birthday is also on Chai Elul. So their philosophy and teachings of Chassidus, taris hachasidus haklal, is whether the general teachings of Chassidus, shenitzgalsa, that was introduced and revealed idea Baal Shem Tov through the Baal Shem Tov, but then specifically taris hachasidus Chabad, the Chabad focus of the general teachings of Chassidus, shenitzgalsa idea Adam Razakin, that was taught by the Alter Rebbe and revealed by the Alter Rebbe. That the idea of Chassidus is to bring Chassidus down to this world, and not specifically Chassidus Chabad, means the Baal Shem Tov taught, like many times the Rebbe described, the difference between the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe. Like one time the Rebbe said the Baal Shem Tov stood the ladder, put the ladder of how a person could climb up to heaven, the same ladder of Yaakov. And the Alter Rebbe showed how to climb the ladder. That's the difference between the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. The Alter Rebbe took it to the logic, to the Chachma bin Das. Lahar gam piskim shabal Shem Tov gila is close inyan. V'adam razakin gila is a derech shmei gila zeh. That the Baal Shem Tov revealed the general idea, and the Alter Rebbe showed how to do the general idea. Right? You have an idea, and the question is how do we execute it? The Rebbe says, because it's known that because of the great wondrous about the idea of teaching, the teachings of Chassidus, there was all types of obstacles and stumbling blocks. And kitroigim comes even from heaven, even from good sources, not just from Satan. The kitrog is the voices of opposition. Lamaila in heaven, and because there was all these obstacles and holding ups and kitroigim, levels of oppositions in heaven, therefore it expresses itself like that in this world as well. Therefore the Alter Rebbe and the Baal Shem Tov they had to fight up to the level of Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice, in order to push through the revelations of Chassidus. Again, this wasn't just opposition coming from unholy places. It was coming from holy places. Until they were able to be victorious. Therefore, so when we talk about celebrating Chai Elul, so today we're the 15th of El, so we're learning the Sicha that's getting ready for Chai Elul. So therefore, if it was a tremendous battle and all these obstacles and voices of opposition and kitroigim. So to push through and to be victorious afterwards, a day of Chai Elul has to be like a celebration because their lives changed the world. It has to be a celebration like you would celebrate the return of a victory. With all the spoils of victory, right? What did the evil Titus do? He showed it in the Beis Hamikdash. He showed what he was victorious with. The Ishleim, the Rebbe says we could say, to elaborate a bit on the example that we're talking about, the ministers or the generals of the war who come back from the war in a celebration and with all the zari nitzachim and machama, with all the spoils that they got from the victory. The Rebbe says shizar hu kamoi keser va'atara. Zar specifically is like the crowns. The crowns that you took the crown jewels of the opposition or of the victory. Sha'agabe rosh, that sits on top of the head. Shuinin makif, that's external, that's an encompassing energy. By the very fact that the Alter Rebbe and the Baal Shem Tov were victorious in the revelations and the teachings of Chassidus, not only were they able to capture, to reveal the internal lights of the teachings of Chassidus, their victory caused that there were additional external lights, encompassing lights. And from them it spoils, meaning to say, like, you show you got something, you conquered something in your war. So the victory march and the victory parade, that even though the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe were so great when they went out to war, but when you have a victory and you conquer more than what you had, that's the whole point of a victory, right? So you had more than what you went into the war with. So even the great makif that they had, encompassing energy that the Alter Rebbe and the Baal Shem Tov had before they went out to war, their makif, their encompassing energy, which goes on highest levels, was even greater than after the victory. The Friedrich Rebbe continues. The custom of the world is, when you have a victory for a general's victory, it's not just a personal victory parade for the general. His whole team, right? It's a team effort. So the whole team joins in the celebration, gets respect, and gets gifts, including the soldiers of all the different levels, because they're part of the victory. They're part of the team. Every individual is part of the team. According to their position. In the army, each one, obviously, there's a captain, there's a colonel, there's all different levels. And so every soldier, also according to their job that they did in the victory. And also, right, you get all the kind of rewards and medals everyone gets, also depending on your individual efforts and accomplishments in this war. So too in a victory, in a holy victory. The holy victory is also all the Rebbe's men and women that are out there fighting the battle. So on their positions and on their individual accomplishments. Asher betach, the Rebbe says, surely. All the Chevra Kaddish, the holy gathering of the students of the holy Baal Shem Tov, he had his group of Chevra, his students, the Rebbe's, the Baal Shem Tov students, that he sent all over the world to do different things. Talmidav, and the students of his students, Nasi Yisrael, the leaders of the Jewish people, the Dor Yisrael for generations. Also with those that are connected to the Nasiya. All the Chassidim, till us sitting here tonight. Every person, according to what they do in their job and their accomplishments. They're going to be respected, from the word kavod, with great gifts. With elevation over elevation. This is the way it is. So all those, imagine, the Rebbe says, there comes Chai Elul, and there's a celebration for the victory of the Baal Shem Tov. and the victory of the Alter Rebbe. So therefore, it affects all those who were part of his team. So then, obviously, all the Rebbe's Chassidim and the Baal Shem Tov's Chassidim on Chai Elul in heaven get their elevations and gifts as well. So the Rebbe says that's the way it is in heaven. And the Rebbe continues afterwards. Also for those who are still in this world. The Frierdiker Rebbe says, also us. We live in these physical houses in this world. Comes Chai Elul, when it's a victory march for the victories of the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe. We get mentioned for blessing in the prayers of the birthday boys, the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe. What does that mean to be mentioned? What does that mean to be part of the victory, part of the big victory celebration, even while we're here still in this world? The Rebbe says, that it means that they get a mention for compassion in heaven for all those who are connected and those who are connected to those who are connected and goes in the ways of the teachings of the Alter Rebbe and Baal Shem Tov. That they're able to continue to throw themselves into the teachings of the Holy Rebbes, and to walk on the wide path, avoida in service, abayra of service of Hashem, avoida shebelev in the service of the heart, ubetikkun amidas, fixing and rectifying our character, but obviously showing our ability to love our fellowship. Means that the Yisayis Rachim Yavim, the awakening of compassion is, of course, not just for Gashmi's brachas, that too, but specifically for spiritual abilities, to be able to walk the path, to be able to do the avodah. The Alter Rebbe says we can point out, what does it mean, those who live? Shaychni means from the word shachen, from the word shchina, the word to rest. Bate chaymer, shemaduber hu gam in the houses, the physical houses. Shemaduber hu gam oidis elush nishmasem luveshes leirak beguf kashmel gam beguf chumri. We're talking about a person. The word chaymer also means coarse. In the coarse homes, it means the home that is a host to the person. So too, the Rebbe says we're not just talking about people that have bodies, but their bodies are refined. Even if our bodies are not so refined anymore. Even a person who has a coarse body hasn't still refined the physicality of themselves. Also, if they're walking in the paths of the Rebbes, they're walking in the paths of the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, for them also is a great day. Chai Elul is not. So basically, the Rebbe is saying in a point that Chai Elul is not. We're not celebrating Chai Elul. Is a celebration for that the Baal Shem Tov 200 years ago, or now it's 200 and such years ago, right? It was born, or the Alter Rebbe was born, so many years ago, and okay, it's a celebration for them for their efforts. They weren't. They were generals. They were leaders of a movement, of an idea, and that idea was a battle, and that battle was a victory. And therefore, on their birthdays that brought them into this world to do the battle, they celebrate that victory yearly. And everyone who's part of that story, part of that battle, up until this day, so it's not a story of the Baal Shem Tov, it's a story of you. Because the Baal Shem Tov is celebrating, it affects you. The Rebbe says, so it says, everyone, even a person who has a course, still hasn't refined themselves, but are part of the story, gets an elevation in Chai Elul. The Rebbe says, imagine this. We're talking about the birthday of the Holy Baal Shem Tov, Admir Zaken, Alter Rebbe. We don't even have to emphasize the greatness of the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe. Specifically, and not just we're talking about the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, we're talking about on their birthdays. And this is their time of their victory march, of their victory parade. With all the crowns of victory, what they conquered the crowns, which is, like we said, the makif, which was even greater than the makif they had before. We're talking about great revelations. It's even great with regard to the Baal Shem Tov himself and the Alter Rebbe. Notwithstanding, the great revelations that happens on Chai Elul, if you're a chassid and are connected to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe's way, which goes back to the Alter Rebbe and to the Baal Shem Tov, so that those elevations affect you, even if you're talking about a person who has a guf chumri, a coarse body. What does it mean a guf chumri? You haven't refined yourself yet. You're still struggling with your body needs. Ba'adarab, on the contrary. Here in a sense, that's the whole point. Beglal sham shachim imakim, naila b'yasir, because it's not notwithstanding, but because the revelations is coming from such a high source, lechem b'yachalti ligiyad l'mata b'yosir, it could go so low. Like the rule of thumb is the higher something is, the lower it could go. Because it's such a great revelation, it's not limited and doesn't restrict even a person. As long as you're on the path, and as long as you're connected, as long as you're wearing a uniform, you're part of the battle, even if you have so much that you're struggling with on your own, because it's such a great light, it doesn't limit you, as you're also part of the story. Like the Rebbe says, Friedrich Rebbe says, even if you're sitting in a coarse house, in this low physical world, they get mentioned for positivity, and for blessing. He mentions you. The Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe are thinking that every single person till today, out there part of the war, gets mentioned. That what's the mentioning mean? That it awakens compassion from heaven. Because this comes from above. It's not, you're not creating this iris. If we had to create the awakening of compassion, who knows what would be? Because we're still sitting in these physical coarse bodies. This is an awakening that's coming from the Holy Baal Shem Tov on his birthday, from the Holy Alter Rebbe on his birthday. So it's according to his level of his iris of awakening. Even though this comes from an awakening from above, we have to prepare ourselves, and we have to make ourselves worthy of these blessings and these awakenings. And this idea that on one side it's a victory that affects and brings compassion and blessing from the Rebbe's all the way down to the Chassid till today, in a guf gashmi, in a physical body, in a chumri, in a coarse body. But at the same time, we have to have avodas atzma. You have to make yourself worthy of it. So these two ideas is connected to Chayel, is also connected to what the Friedrich Rebbe verbringt in that time. We know from Chayel, although the whole month of El is a preparation for Rosh Hashanah for the new year, but specifically it goes into high gear on the 18th of El, like the Friedrich Rebbe said, because the 12 days from Chai El, counting Chai El is always a month of 29 days. So if you count Chai El till the end of the 29 days, it's 12 days. So those 12 days, you have to really up your game in Teshuvah. Because every one of those days correspond to a different month. Chai Elul is Tishrei, Yutes Elul is Cheshvan, Chof Elul is Kislev, and that's the day you focus. How did I do on the month of Tishrei, and how did I do in the month of Cheshvan? So it goes into real focus. Elul is kind of the month of evaluation, but you start getting specific, because when evaluation, you say, "Oh, this year wasn't so good," but when you start putting it down, how did I do in Tishrei specifically? How did I do in Cheshvan specifically? And that's when you take it to Chayil starts a whole nother level of focus of Cheshvan HaNefesh. Each day of the 12 days represents another day of the month. Starting with Chayil itself. Chayil is when you have to figure ourselves, how did we do in Tishrei? Which means starting from Rosh Hashanah of last year. The 10 days of Teshuvah and the day of Yom Kippur, 4 days in between, and the days of Sukkot, etc. How did we do? The idea is that Chodesh Tishrei, although Chodesh Tishrei is one of the months of the year, and the days of the 30 days of Tishrei, or the month of Tishrei, are part of the 354 or 55 days of, or 85 days of the year. I guess if there's a leap year. Is Harigam Achoidish Klali, Hey Minigay Lamshacha Kol Hashan Haba. So even nevertheless, Harihu Gam Chodesh Klali. Aside from being one of the months, it's also a general month. Tishrei is a general month. It's not just your regular month, right? It has all the general holidays. Because the month of Tishrei is the month that has Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah Rabbah, which affects the whole year. That's the year. Those are the holidays that we're praying for a good year. The holidays of Tishrei are general holidays that affect the whole year. That bring down light for the whole year. And also Rosh Hashanah we get really focused on fixing what we did last year, even more than Elul. You break and you get atonement for the sins of the obligations of your people, meaning that you rectify what we did before. So it's a general month. It affects our past and our present and our future. So though the month of Tishrei is also just one of the months of the year, but it's not just any month, it's the general month, both in the past and the future. So when it comes to Chai Elul, which is the day that we have to make an evaluation for how did our Tishrei go, how our movements understood, but the Chai Elul, the day of Chai Elul is a very high day of tshuva, because you have to see, how did I do on a general month, on a very pivotal month that affected my whole life, and affected especially in this year and last year. And then it also has within it the other 12 days, because it's a general month. So therefore, just like a general month has in it the whole year, so Chai Elul has really a kind of a part of the rest of the 12 days that you have more specifically for each month. And this is what the Friedrich Rebbe means, the Rebbe says. That although the birthdays of the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, they awaken rachamim, compassion, for the chassid or the chassidah that's out there in the battlefield, even if you're in a coarse situation and you have a lot of refining to do in your physicality. Nevertheless, we have to have a avodah mata. What's the avodah mata? What's our work? Is that Chai Elul is a very high day of evaluation of tikkun, because you're fixing the month of Tishrei, which is fixing the whole year. And in it come, if you want to have even the crowns of the victory, the makiv of the high levels that are even high for the Baal Shem Tov. So that's because on Chai Elul we have to do our part to make ourselves worthy of it. The Rebbe adds, we'll hire to point out, the idea of victory we also find in the month of Tishrei, which Chai Elul is about a victory, right? Because Chai Elul is the victory march parade for the Baal Shem Tov, and Chai Elul is the day that we remember Tishrei, and Tishrei is a day of victory. Why? The Medrash teaches us one of the ideas of walking out on Sukkot in the streets, right? We don't hide our lulav. We walk proudly with our lulav down the street. So the Medrash says that the idea of the lulav in the street is like two people who go into a judgment, to a judge. We don't know who won the court case. When you see something, the person who's walking with the article in their hands, it shows that they're holding on to it. They're the victorious ones. So too, the Jewish people and the nations. Not just that there's a judgment for the Jewish people and the nations. There's a judgment of the Jewish people from the nations. The nations are coming with claims against the Jewish people, and that's all brought in front of God in Rosh Hashanah. So says the Medrash. We don't know who won. Maybe the Goyim won. Maybe the nations won in their claims against the Jewish people. Right? You don't have to look too hard to imagine. This is not a foreign concept anymore. Right? There's no place in the world where there's not 24/7 voices of Kitroigim against the Jewish people. Ad hayom, till this minute. When the Jewish people walk out on Sukkot after the Day of Judgment, after Yom Kippur, and they're holding their lulav and esrog, which is like a sword, their weapons, Anyan Yoidin, that's the sign, the Israelin Nitzchayu, the Jewish people won the victory. The nations realized they lost, and they acknowledged that. That's why in Sukkot we say, Halus Hashem kol goyim, Shabchu kol umim ki gover aleinu chazde. They praise Hashem that ki gover aleinu chazde, that God gave victory for the Jewish people. Yiratzin, the Rebbe says, may it be. Shetia avoided Chai Elul, now that we're coming up, where Chai Elul is coming upon us now, that's the avoid that we have to do, and the avoid that the Rebbe has to do. Everything we mentioned before, Koil Gam included this. Another thing that the previous Rebbe says in another talk with regard to Chai Elul, the Rebbe says it's printed so you can check it. 15, what year is it? Tafshin Hey, 1945. Chai Elul Moisiv Chayis by Baitis Chayis. Chayis from the word Chayis, vitality. That Chai Elul, kind of if you need to put turbo into your Elul avoda, Chai Elul gives Chayis into Elul. And that gives extra blessing from above. Like it says, from life to life to give you more life. This should be a preparation. Amatima that's appropriate, L'shana Haba for the coming year. Sheniska, maybe we merit. Ksiva v'chsima tova for a written and signed, sealed good year. L'shana taiva mituka for a good sweet year. V'taiva nira nigla in a revealed way. V'bani chaya with blessings of life, mezayna parnasa, revicha, and abundance and health. So the Rebbe blesses everyone on this wonderful talk. Let's go a few more minutes further. We'll go the full time. Now, in this same talk, we're talking about, I believe, Tavshin Gimel. Nizbar Noisev Ini Noisev. The Rebbe says something else. The Friedrich Rebbe. The Rebbe is quoting his father-in-law. The Friedrich Rebbe said something that gives a little insight to what's the idea of the celebration of a birthday, the happiness of a birthday, Simcha. And in general, a person is happy on their birthday. What does that mean? Why a person happy on their birthday? And also, specifically when it comes to the birthday of a tzaddik. The Rebbe says we could ask, what's such a big deal? Why does everyone make such a big deal out of birthday? Especially, like, why are we so happy about it? Why is it a day of joy? If you think about it, the way the Chassidus, from the Chassidic angle of the day you were born, it's not a great day. Your soul that was in a good place comes down into a physical body for challenges. So you read the Neshama, the Neshama has to come down. So what's the celebration? Or Pratius Yais, the Rebbe says to be more specific. Torah calls it a descent. It's not just that it's a relocation, a change of place. It's a yerida, it's a descent in quality and in its eternal abilities. It's not just within range. For the soul to go from heaven, any place in heaven, to a physical body is not just a little descent. That's a totally it's like a totally another league. It's not like getting downgraded from from the major leagues to the minor leagues. It's a whole other sport. It's like you're being born. Like the Alter Rebbe writes in Shulchan Aruch, one of the reasons we wash our hands in the morning. Every morning, when you wake up and God gives you back your soul in full consciousness, it's like you're being born again. It says, you become new in the boker, in the morning. And what do we say every morning? This soul that you've given back to me, and afterwards we say, you created it. Meaning, that the soul, that's tahor, it's like it's recreated to become human, part of a human. Meaning to say, that's not just the soul that relocates itself. It's totally reconformed. It's like a total new creation for the soul. Ramban, as the Nachmanides says, Parshas Bereshis, Pipirish, Bereshis Barim, it says the beginning God created. Ein etzleinu b'lashon hakodesh b'hoitzas hayesh mi'ayin el lashon bara. The Ramban, I have to see this inside. This problem, the Mefarshim on Bereshis in the beginning are so huge. But the Ramban writes, especially the Ramban, that we don't have any way to describe this idea of from something that comes from nothing, yesh, that comes from something ayin that never existed. The only thing we could say is called creation, bara. But we don't. That's just a word. It's not really a proper description. She'asa ein yeshna, she'zeu inin she've'ein aroich. That something she'asa ein yeshna, I think it means something that wasn't came into existence. That's totally another league. Another something be'ein aroich. V'chol ze afilu b'negei le'inin debarei chadasha, k'fi she'nas v'chayim. And this is included when you say Ata Barasa, means every morning. It's like a totally new invention. The idea that we come back to this world. And the Rebbe says this has to be, we know that the Alter Rebbe quotes the Baal Shem Tov in Tanya, that the world gets recreated every second. But the very fact that we point it out every morning when we wake up, so it's not the same every moment that we're talking about, because why would we say a special prayer for that? Every moment we should say that prayer. Is because something greater is happening when you wake up, even more than the recreation of the world constantly. As the Baal Shem Tov says, "Let them invite Dvarchnitz v'Shmaim." As Alter Rebbe quotes the second section of time, the Baal Shem Tov is teaching that the Olam, God's words, are constantly recreating the world. But when in the morning we make a prayer, that's a different kind of recreation. The word of God, the same utterances that created the world keep the world in existence. So if every morning we make a special prayer, surely the actual day the person was born is a totally new bria creation, yesh me'ayin, something from nothing. When the person was born the first time. You can't 100% compare someone who's sleeping in their bed, tossing and turning, and to someone who was never born before, and then they came into life. So you can't say that a birthday is just like waking up every morning. Surely, when you were actually born, it's surely a creation, something from nothing, and not totally different from the way it was before. The closing that idea is. So why do we celebrate the Brit? If it's a Yerida, right, then we have all these songs, you read the Tzarech Aliyah, all these, Neshama, you read this, the Derech HaGuf, it's hard for it. It screams Vai, it screams why. So the answer is because when it's in heaven, it's only spiritual. When it comes to this world, it gets part of physical things. You read the Gedalim because that's a great descent. And we don't know how this descent is going to end off, right? Every time you go on a path, on a road, it's dangerous. The roads are dangerous. Blessed be you when you come in, blessed be you when you go out. Why? Because we don't know how things happen when you're on the road. Like Rashi quotes, you should be merit that you leave the world the way you came into the world. And that's if. Just like when you came into the world, you had no sin, you should be blessed to leave the world the same way. And who accomplishes that? So the Rebbe says, so why are we celebrating the Brit? The idea is, you read the Tzarech Aliyah. The idea is that you're going down to this world for this elevation that you accomplish in this world. That's the whole point. The point is, we're just going to try to say a little bit of it. Notwithstanding of all these ideas, of all the challenges and all the brias and all the creations and all the dangers of the path, that you come down into this physical body, like you said before in the talk, that even while you're doing your work, you're still in a coarse body. There's one major point. When you're in this world, you're doing what your tafkid is, what your job is, what was meant for you. To be in a spiritual safe space is nice, but that's not why you were created. That's not your tafkid. It's to stay holy in heaven. V'shlichusa, in your mission. Specifically to engage the same danger that we're talking about, which is to engage your body and your animal soul and your place of influence. Those same places that are dangerous is why you're here. You came to face the danger. It's not that you're going one place and there's danger on the side of the road. You are going specifically to the dangerous place of the world to conquer that. That's how you make an elevation. And the idea is not to get back, although we just quoted the Rashi that says, blessed is the person who comes back as they came in. But that's not the real purpose of it. That's, the purpose has to be because then Redeem came, what was the point of it? That's like it says about the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe had, the crowns were much greater when he was on the victory. In a victory, you have to accomplish something. Investment is for a return. You don't invest capital to get back your capital exactly as you gave it. Even though some people say, wow, I wish I just got my money back. That's nice, but then why did you give the money in the first place? So the reason why a person goes in an investment, the reason why a soul comes down to this world is for a return. And it has to be a great return. And there's no other way. There's no way to get that return unless you took the risk. And the risk is to face the battle. If not going down below. To stop over here, everyone. I wish everyone a Shabbos and a meaningful Chai Elul coming up next week. And see, we hope Mir Hashem. I'm not 100% sure there's going to be a Lakutei Torah class next week. I may have to be in the airport. I will keep everyone posted. Please pay attention to your emails or WhatsApps. Laila Tov, take care.